Good afternoon, everybody. Going to be another recap on the day, talk about the best trades and kind of what happened on ES and NASDAQ throughout the day. So, a little bit of a snapshot of the market today. We had pretty flat movement across the board. The bond yields are only down 0.5%. The dollar's down 0.1%. The euro pretty much flat. USD JPY pretty much flat. Bitcoin down about 1.25, and then gold pretty much flat. So not really any movement across the board on most of the markets. Bitcoin moving the most, down slightly, trying to recover, but still holding a little bit of that bearish momentum. Looking at the daily candle here on ES, we had a pretty long-legged doji. You had a long wick on the high, long wick on the low. So it didn't really have too much decisive price action. If you look at just the past couple of days, you could argue that it did close slightly bullish because you did sweep Thursday and Wednesday. The Thursday and Wednesday lows were taken out with today's lower wick, and then we closed back inside of those candles. So technically, that would be a sweep. If we zoom out a little bit further, looking at the last couple of weeks, we still are putting in a lower high. So you can see the price action right here, putting in a lower high from May 19th to May 20th. And then we have that sweep of that 6,000 level. So we tried to break out of that high and then closed pretty weak to the downside. So if we look at the last couple of weeks altogether, it does look slightly bearish. But overall, the monthly close not really giving us any decisive price action from just today. Looking at the trade plans and recapping kind of what happened for today, we had our holding below level of 59.05. We tried to hold below that after the open. We did hit one of our bearish targets at 58.62. We were not able to hit that 32 target. So we only got about half of our trade plan to the downside there. So we didn't get the upper trade plan at all because we did not hold we did not hold above that 44 level. Looking at NASDAQ, I think we got one of our targets. Yeah, damn near to the exact point. We held below 21,320, looking for that 21,070 level. And that was pretty much the low of day, damn near to the point there. You can see that level getting tested right there. And then we did not trigger our bullish trade plan holding above 630 because that value high was pretty far away. All right, let's take a look at some of the trades that you could have taken for today. We had a couple of trades during our morning stream that we talked about on the live stream. One of the biggest ones was this rebound trade right here. Let me get rid of that. I just have these here to remind me to go over them. So we had that rebound trade around 9:45, which also, if you guys watched my recap yesterday, you could almost say that this was a bear flag into VWAP as well. But the rebound trade, what happens with the rebound? And let me go back to TradingView here so I can just kind of draw this out for you. What kind of happens? Let me grab a clean chart. What happens with a rebound trade is, let's say we have a level and we try to break that level to the upside and we have a strong break of that level. The rebound is right after you have a significant break. You want to pull back pretty much immediately into that level. And that can be on the buy side or that can be also on the sell side. So not like a bear flag where you kind of slowly pull back. It's an instant pullback. So we break the level and then we instantly pull back into that major level. And that would give us that bearish rebound trade. So if I go back to Addis here, we had one of those bearish rebound trades around that VWAP because we kind of broke through the VWAP and then we instantly pulled back. It did take a few minutes, but I wouldn't quite call that a long extended bear flag. Pretty much right after the open, we broke down and then instantly pulled back into that level. And then if you want to get even more specific to this rebound trade, if you want to really hone it in to a 3 to 4 minute time frame, it really happened around that 9:47 to 9:49 when we started to break that low, and then you kind of bounced back into it, and then you had significant sell pressure around that 9:49. So we had a little bit of a rebound on that VWAP level, and then you had another rebound, which is kind of hard to see on the 1 minute chart. If you go back and watch my live stream, I talk about it kind of exactly when it happened, but it was around that 9:45 to 9:49 area. Broke the level, bounced back into it, and then sold aggressively after that bounce. Okay, so a little bit of a rebound trade there. And in this example, if you took the one on VWAP, you would have just been putting your stop loss obviously above VWAP, above any major levels that you could have used as resistance. So in this case, you could have used the high around 09 or the high around 10, or you could have just used kind of a VWAP stop, so like a few points above VWAP, saying, okay, if it breaks VWAP, I probably don't want to be in that trade. So if it bounced like 3 to 5 points above VWAP, you would have been done with that trade. And then the target for this one would have just been a break into the lows. Same thing we target with a bear flag into VWAP. We want to look for those new lows. So we would have looked for anything below 95, and we could have also targeted some value levels below that. So if like we had a value low around like 90 to 85, you could have targeted that as well. Okay. So in between that trade and the next trade, which was around 10:39, it was basically just a rotation. So you could have bought the value low, which I believe was somewhere around here. I forget what the exact level was, but it was somewhere around 90 to 95, I believe, at the time. So from the value low, we were just rotating all the way back to the value high. If you missed that rotation, there really wasn't any major trade on that in that time frame around like 9:50 to 10:30, that span of like 40 minutes. There wasn't really any significant playbook trades in that area. So just the rotation. And then getting to the next trade, the next playbook trade, it would have been around that 10:40, which we talked about pretty aggressively on the live stream, on the morning live stream. So what we had on that rollover was we had a vertical distribution start to form. You had these higher highs coming in, just very small higher highs. You could even call them weak highs. So putting in a couple of weak highs there, and then you started to stall out around this 1037, and then you started to break that 24 EMA. So as I always talk about with the vertical distributions, is you always want to keep an eye on that 24 EMA. Once you start to break that 24 to the downside, that vertical distribution is coming to an end. You are possibly rolling over and looking for VWAP or the prior low as your main target. So in this case, we were breaking that 24 EMA, and we were looking for VWAP and that prior low as our targets, okay? So you started to lose that high. You had this was actually like 3 trades at the same time. You had a sweep. What time was that? That was around 10:30. That was right here. So we had a sweep of the high, a 30-minute sweep. It was also finishing the rotation. So as I talked about earlier, you had that rotation from the value low into the value high. So if you took that rotation, you would have been a seller up here anyway. If you took the bearish sweep, you would have been a seller up there. And then if you took the vertical distribution turning into a rollover top, you would also have been a seller up here. So around that 59.15 to 59.20, you had 3 different setups telling you to sell there. So depending on which one you took, your stop loss would have been a little bit farther away. So like if you took the sell at 20, then obviously you had a great sell. Your stop loss is probably like 25. If you took the sells around 15, your stop loss is probably closer to 20, maybe 21, because you would have put your stop loss above that local high. Okay, so normally when you take a rollover top or you take a vertical distribution coming to an end, you want to get in when that that lower high starts to get established, or when that 24 EMA starts to break downward, and then you put your stop loss above that most recent high that just happened. So in this case, that most recent high was 19 to 20, so you would have put your stop loss above that level. Okay, and as I always talk about with any of those trades, you target VWAP and you target the prior low. So your first target was to the tick, you hit VWAP right there. And once again, if you go back and watch my live stream, I kind of walked you guys through this trade as best I could during the live stream. So as long as we were protecting that 24 EMA, we were continuing to the downside. And we protected that 24 EMA pretty much until around 11:30 when we had that strong break of the 24 EMA. And obviously in hindsight, you still kind of protected the 24 and sold off. But at the time, that was a pretty strong break of the 24 EMA, which started actually making the 24 EMA go up. It was an ascending EMA, and you also had a lot of delta coming in there. So at the time, that was a very scary break. So that would have pretty much ended your trade there. So you had a really nice target into VWAP, and then you kind of ended your trade on that break of the 24, anywhere from like 59.07 to 59.13. So even if you got trailed out there, worst case scenario, you still would have profited on that trail break. If you were lucky enough to actually hold on to that trade, you would have hit your next target, which was that prior low right there. So when you started to break down from VWAP, you would have hit your next target there. So those were the two major trades today. We had the rebound trade in the morning, which could have been a bear flag in the VWAP, and we had the rollover top, which could have been a bearish sweep or a rotation trade. So a lot of things lining up there. And then for the rest of the day, there weren't really any high strike rate setups besides just trading the rotations. So let me get rid of all this here. If I go back to my volume profile, pretty much we were just looking for rotations. So you failed to break out of, or you did break out of balance, but you failed to stay out of balance, and you started bouncing off that 62 support. And then after that, you were just rotating back into today's POC, which also lined up with yesterday's POC. And this is very common on the last trading day of the month. When you have the monthly close, it typically likes to find a level wherever it's building kind of the POC up. It likes to find a level that it likes, and it just kind of pins price to that level. And that can be due to many things that I'm not going to get into on today's video, but if you guys are trading in the options market, they like to call it gamma levels or like pin levels. And you see a lot of that in the options market where they kind of find a level they like and they want to stick it to that level. And that happens very often on the monthly close. So that level that they liked today was just that kind of POC and lined up with POC of yesterday. And they just kind of chopped around that level the entire day. So we tried to break out of that level a couple times, and then you just rotated back into that value. Okay. But all right, guys, that is the recap from today. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Peace.